Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In the course of his article, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, Alan Turing is going to consider a number of objections and arguments against a machine being able to think in any real, non-metaphorical way. And one of those arguments, or rather sets of arguments that he identifies, is worth doing a somewhat deeper dive into because it shows a sort of line of prevalent thinking that may be, in fact, applicable even in our own time as we consider questions of artificial intelligence. And so he calls this arguments from various disabilities. So not being able to do certain things. The machine, the computer, is not able to do what the human being can do. And he says that these arguments will take an interesting form. So the person will say, I grant you, you can make machines do all the things that you've mentioned. So they're conceding that machines can, in fact, do some things that we associate with human beings or intelligence. But, and this is the key but, you will never be able to make one do X. So X is any sort of dividing line where you're just not going to be able to get a machine to ever do that sort of thing. And what would examples of that be? Well, he gives us a whole bunch of them. Be kind, resourceful, friendly, have initiative, right? So be kind, okay, maybe if they don't have emotions or motivations. Resourceful, maybe machines can be resourceful in some sense. Friendly, okay, that's a tricky one. Does it mean talking in a friendly way? Does it mean actually having friendship with somebody else? Have initiative, do things on their own. Have a sense of humor. That's a tricky one as well. Tell right from wrong. Okay, now we're getting into some pretty deep areas. Some people seem to have a really hard time telling right from wrong. Notice this one. Make mistakes. He's going to consider that one. Fall in love. Enjoy strawberries and cream. Another one that he'll consider. Make someone fall in love with it. Well, we know that that's happening because people right now have AI girlfriends that they think are real. Including some fairly famous philosophers who probably should know better. Use words properly. That's an interesting one there, isn't it? And then be the subject of its own thought. He's going to consider that one. Have as much diversity of behavior as a man or a human being. He'll also consider that one. Do something really new. Now that one he'll consider later, in the discussion of Lady Lovelace's objection, which is going to lead into learning machines. So we'll put that one aside. And notice that maybe not in real life, but certainly in science fiction, there are artificial intelligences, machines, robots, computers, that do all these sorts of things. But fiction is different than reality, isn't it? So can we actually expect a machine to do any of these things in reality? And he's going to say two really interesting things here. The first is that people throw these ideas out there, And they typically don't offer any sort of support for them. Well, why should a machine not be able to tell right from wrong? I personally think that at least, on a low level, we can probably program machines to tell right from wrong in certain circumstances, but not to truly understand the difference between right and wrong. But to program them to have a robust conception of ethics, that's probably beyond us. But I can't say for certain myself, and I'm a professional ethicist who's been thinking about these matters for many, many years, right? I can offer you some support. Most people say, no, you just can't do that sort of thing. Obviously, a machine can't appreciate strawberries and cream. Well, I don't know. What if we gave it an artificial palate and programmed in what strawberries ought to be associated with and cream? Maybe we could. And so, interestingly, Turing is going to say a lot of people are basing this on the principle of scientific induction. So what is the principle of scientific induction? You look at the examples, the cases that you've encountered, and then you generalize from them. So all the swans that you see in the world in front of you are white. You conclude that all swans are white, which is incorrect because there are occasionally black swans. Maybe there's other color swans too, for all we know, with some weird genetic mutation. But in general, these things are correct so long as our sample was actually the right sample. So for determining things about birds, maybe good enough. For determining things about machines and their ultimate capacities, maybe not. He says that a person has seen thousands of machines in their lifetime. From what they've seen, they draw a number of general conclusions. The machines tend to be ugly, designed for very limited purposes. When required for a minutely different purpose, they're useless. Variety of behavior of any one of them is very small. Naturally, he concludes these are necessary properties of machines in general. But a lot of this really has to do with the very small storage capacity of most machines. Doesn't really apply necessarily to digital computers, which are beginning to be, a thing in his time. Now we could say, we know all about digital computers. Well, yes, we know about certain digital computers. We know about the ones in our phones and laptops, and we hear things about supercomputers. We see some sci-fi shows about computers. That's not reality. Do we really know that much about machines? Maybe not. So he says that, if we want to be able to generalize, we would really need to take in a wider sample of them. And then he says, I want to make some special remarks about some of the disabilities that have been mentioned. So to enjoy strawberries and cream may have struck the reader as frivolous. And he says, perhaps you could design a machine to enjoy this delicious dish, but any attempt to do so would be idiotic. What the hell are you doing? Why are you making a machine specifically to enjoy strawberries and cream? And, you could say, well, that's what I wanted to do. But Turing thinks that's kind of dumb. But it could have implications. Maybe an inability of that sort has to do with more important inabilities or disabilities. For example, to have friendliness occurring between man and machine, as he says, white man and white man, or between black man and black man. Okay, so can a machine actually be friendly? Maybe not, but maybe so. Kind of depends on what we expect from friendliness. So he drops that one. Then he goes on to a deeper one. So if a machine can't make mistakes, his first reaction is, well, so much the better, right? Didn't you want something that wouldn't make mistakes? And he says, let's actually try to see what they're getting at. So maybe what they're saying is that it's not going to play the imitation game well, because when you give that machine mathematical problems that a human being would struggle with, the machine won't struggle with it or give you incorrect results, and you can be like, aha, I know I'm dealing with a computer here. He says, well, Why couldn't you program the machine to make mistakes of a sort in that way to give incorrect information? So the machine would not attempt to give the right answers to arithmetic problems. It would deliberately introduce mistakes in a manner calculated to confuse the interrogator, right? So that's one issue. And he says, this seems to me to depend on a confusion between two different kinds of mistakes. Errors of functioning, like something goes wrong in the programming of the machine or in the calculation that it's carrying out. Somehow something gets corrupted. That's one thing, and it makes a mistake. And then there's errors of conclusion, where he says that when you do that, that arises when some meaning is attached to the output signals. So these are both possible, it seems, for a machine. So where are you getting the idea that a machine can't make mistakes? Then he talks about what we often call reflexivity, the ability of for example, human being to think about their own thinking. This, by the way, is that word that so many people love to throw around because it's such a cool word, metacognition, which just means thinking about thinking. Right? It's not a new thing on the scene. People have been talking about this for millennia, and it's characteristic of human beings. If you can say, I think my thinking processes are wrong, well, you've thought about thinking. You've thought about your thinking, right? Can a machine actually do that? And he says, well, there are two things to say here. The first is that this only really works if you're already assuming that the machine is thinking to begin with, but it's not thinking about itself. It's only thinking about its subject matter, like how to make widgets or whether the weather is going to affect the fields or not. It needs to be irrigated or not irrigated. But he says, why couldn't a machine actually think about itself? It might be used to help making up its own programs, right? You ask the machine, how would you function better? What could I do to make you work better, right? Or predict effects of alterations in its own structure. If I delete this one subprogram here, how's that going to affect you? Oh, don't do that. Don't pull that lever, right? If the machine can do that, it's thinking about itself. Or it could even modify its own programs to achieve some purpose more effectively. He says these are possibilities of the near future, not utopian dreams. And we do, in fact, have computer programs that do something like that, at least to some degree. Maybe not to the degree that a human being can. Maybe they can't have existential attitudes of dread or worry or happiness about their own programming, but it seems like they can, in fact, take some sort of stances. The last one that he talks about, diversity of behavior. This is one that René Descartes actually brought up as a test for how you can tell a human apart from a machine. A machine can do a lot of cool things individually, but it cannot do the wide range of things that a human being can do because a human being possesses reason and the machine only possesses programming. And Turing says this is just a way of saying it can not have much storage capacity. And as we increase storage capacity, maybe a machine can, in fact, have a wide range of behavior. Now, we're not at the point where that does seem to be the case in the present, although some people may attribute that to, say, LLMs, but it doesn't really seem like we're there. But it's not something to rule out altogether, perhaps. And he says, ultimately, the criticisms we're considering here are often disguised forms of the argument from consciousness, one that he's looked at before. If you maintain a machine can do one of these things and describe the kind of method the machine could use, one will not make much of an impression. The people are already convinced it can't do that sort of thing. It's just imitating. It's just pretending. So he says, you're not going to make much headway. But it's interesting to consider the types of examples that people bring up and what might be problematic about that and where they got their erroneous ideas from.